Hi guys, so I'm a session leader for this week, and my book was The Slave Across the Street by Teresa Flores. I have some notes on my laptop just so I don't forget anything. But yeah, so a little background about her. Her family had a good amount of money. They went on like yearly vacations. They were active in the church, so she believed in saving herself till marriage. Her dad had a job where they had to relocate every couple of years, so she was never in the same place for long. She also had three younger brothers, all of them are like 2 years apart. So going into her freshman year, she moved to Birmingham, Michigan, which is like a little suburb outside of Detroit. And this school had a high population of kids who were born overseas, a lot of them being Arabic. And where they lived, there was many rich kids from different backgrounds, so at night it was kind of like there would be fights breaking out due to like fighting for power of the city. And her first day of school, she noticed that they had a security guard at the school at like the front. She didn't understand why. I never noticed that before, but yeah. So she started to like get a crush on this kid named Daniel. He worked at the school store. He was Arabic. One night, Daniel had called the house phone, and her mother told Teresa to get those Arabs off the phone, and she was just very upset by them calling, which she didn't understand why, because her mom was very accepting of people. That next day, two boys came up to Teresa in the hallway, mad that she hung up the phone on them. These two boys ended up being Daniel's cousins. One of them was named Nick, and then the other one she wasn't named. But they ended up spitting on her face and threatened her in front of the security guard. And the security guard didn't do anything about it, even though he saw it. After school that day, before Teresa went to track practice, Daniel invited her to take her home. And she said yes, she skipped track practice, but instead of him taking her home, he brought her to his house. And here, this is where she was roofied and raped. And she kept telling him, I'm a virgin, and he just did not care, did not listen. After her getting raped, she heard people yelling outside, like in the living room, and Daniel ended up having to sneak her out of the house. She was very ashamed of herself, disappointed because she went home with the boy. She knew her mom would be mad. And then she also was saving herself till marriage, so she was just very disappointed in herself. After that, Daniel ended up calling her private phone line, which she did not answer. She did not give him her phone number or any of that either, so she doesn't know how he got the private phone number. And then the next day in school, Daniel went up to Teresa and said that he needed to talk to her because it was life or death. And when she asked whose life, he said hers. So when they met up, he told her, my cousins, they want to meet you tonight to have sex with them because they took pictures and you need to earn back those pictures. And he showed her the pictures of Daniel and Teresa having sex. So this is when like everything started to happen. So from now on, like from this day, she noticed cars following her home from school and just wherever else she went. And so in the middle of the night, Daniel called her. She got dressed, went outside to a spot, and she was brought back to Daniel's house, and Nick and the other cousin told her that she must do everything he says if she wants the pictures back and if she wants her family safe. So she ended up having sex with them, and this kept on happening every couple of nights. Daniel would call her private line. She would have to sneak out of the house. He would take her to his house or someone else's house where she would have sex with multiple men. And Daniel's family, they're all Arabic. So all the people who were like doing this were Arabic. The moms and sisters knew that all this was kind of happening. Like the girl cousins knew all of this was happening, like this little like sex ring was occurring. But they didn't do anything about it because in their culture, women do not necessarily have rights. So they couldn't do anything about it. The men were the ones who had the power. So later on, she ended up getting a boyfriend and told him what happened because one summer when they were off on like vacation, so the trafficking stopped for a little bit while they were on summer vacation, and her boyfriend was so mad at her that she was hanging around them because they are trouble, and he ended up breaking up with her and telling her that he can't help her. So after that, she then linked up with a previous long-distance boyfriend named Jim. And when school started back up, Jim came to visit her. And she ended up bringing Jim to school one day in hopes of him protecting her. Like, she thought it would scare off the traffickers. But Jim told her, I have to go to the bathroom really quick. So he went to the bathroom. And then when he came back, he told her that he needed to leave now. His mood like changed. He goes, I need to leave now. And he just left the school, and she didn't hear from him. That day after school, she was walking home from school, and a guy was following her and threatened her at knife point to get into the car. He then told her he was tired of sharing her with the other guys, and then he ended up raping her. When the other guys found out, like Nick and all the other people, they took care of him, and she never saw that one guy again. She was watched all the time. They knew where she was at all the times. If she was at someone else's house or at work or something, they knew. They once even called the house phone that she was babysitting at, saying that she needs to come now. And she had to leave. She had to find someone else to come babysit. So one night, she was taken to a motel in Detroit where she was sold to multiple men. And then it was like a very dirty motel. And one man, when he was like one of the last to go, he asked her personal questions like, what's your name, how old you are. And Nick got mad at him and demanded him to leave. She was then hit and abused, and she was left unconscious in the room. When she woke up, no one was in the room. She had no idea where she was. She was just in the middle of Detroit, in the middle of the night, and she found a diner. She walked to the diner. A waitress actually asked if she needed help, and the waitress ended up calling the police. The police ended up taking her home, and the police told her, I know something is going on, but Teresa did not want to talk. So the police gave her his card, so if you want to talk about it, I think there's this, like a sex ring going on. Like, if you want to talk about it, please call me. Well, when she got brought home, her parents were so mad at her. They thought she was out partying. They even said she was out sledding around. She was then grounded. So, throughout everything, she kind of like looked to Daniel as like comfort. Even though he was the reason all this started, he made sure she was okay. He took her home. made sure she was okay, kind of, through it all. She could tell that Daniel, like, all this was hurting Daniel as well. So then one day, she went back to Daniel's house one night, and then she got an offer from Jonathan, Daniel's brother, to be his personal escort. He said he would take care of her, he would get her an apartment, and all the other abuse would stop from the other guys. Well, she didn't know how she felt about this because Jonathan was basically like the ringleader of it all. Nick, all the other guys would look up to Jonathan. They would all follow what Jonathan was saying. She ended up not wanting to do this just because it wasn't in her best interest. He was the ringleader. She was scared like that she would just lose her life forever. So she just kept getting calls from people, Jonathan, Daniel, and all of them. And every time she did not answer, dead animals would show up in her mailbox. And they obviously were threatening her. So one time her dog was even stolen, and she never saw her dog again, meaning her dog probably got killed. But yeah, so she kind of realized, like, oh, my dog got stolen because of this. 2 years later, after all of this started happening, she found out they were moving to Connecticut. She was never happy about moving, but this time she was so happy. She was like over the moon ecstatic. And she didn't tell anyone she was moving. She just kind of went with it. But towards like one of the like last couple days of she was in school, she noticed signs that what was happening to her may have also be happening to another girl. So she tried talking to the other girl. The other girl did not want to hear. She was saying, oh no, they love me, he loves me, he won't do anything. So the girl kicked her out of the house, so Teresa ended up leaving. So when she moved to Connecticut, she had severe PTSD and nightmares like every single night. And then she went off to college the next year. And when she went off to college, she was drinking a lot and was having sex with multiple men. But she could never stay the night with these men because after she would have sex with them, she would get scared and her nightmares would hit. So she ended up meeting a guy in college named Mike, and they started dating, and things were perfect. She was finally starting to be happy, finally felt like she was healing, and one night he jokingly whipped off his belt, and all the memories like hit her like this of when she used to get whipped. So she ended up telling him what happened, and he was the first person who was ever there to be there for her. So they ended up breaking up and stuff. She ended up completing her master's, and then she ended up being married and having 3 kids. The marriage lasted 10 years. It wasn't a good marriage. There was often emotional abuse, and a lot of the stuff reminded her of what used to happen to her back in high school. She then divorced him and took her kids. So she was a social worker, and one day at work, a coworker told her that she had signed up to attend a conference, but she couldn't no longer go. So she asked Teresa if Teresa could go attend the conference. Teresa said sure. She didn't really want to attend it, but she was just trying to be nice and decided to attend this conference. Well, this conference ended up actually being about human trafficking. So this was 31 years after where she found out, oh, this is what happened to me. There's a label for what had happened to me in high school. So from there, she quit her job as a social worker and decided to write this book, basically in order for her to heal. She needed to get all these memories, like memories that she tried pushing away. she had to like re-get all the memories and write them down and write this book basically for her to heal. She also ended up starting a charity called Traffic Free, and she created the logo. So the logo was red for all the red flags of human trafficking, angel wings for the angels who are protecting her, and then a heart for God's love for her. Then with this charity, she also started to train law enforcement officers, judges, child service workers, social workers, people in school, etc. So something I thought was cool that she also did was she also created a bar of soap, and on the packaging it had questions relating to human trafficking. Like, is this happening to you? And also for other people who may experience human trafficking happening. And with that, they had the human trafficking hotline number. She then passed these bars out to 10,000, she passed out 10,000 bars of soap to motels and placed it all over the city of Dallas. And the idea of the soap came about because she said after she was done having sex with these guys, she would go to the bathroom to rinse up. So she always needed a bar of soap. And so that's where she came out with like this bar of soap idea. So basically she concluded that, after all this happened, even later on in life, she never told her parents what had happened to her because she was afraid that she was going to disappoint her parents. So throughout all of like high school, she basically dealt with all of this herself because she didn't want to disappoint her parents. She thought her parents would be upset because she lost her virginity before she was married. And just like she didn't want them to know. So she ended up getting into connection with her ex-boyfriend Jim, the one who came back to visit her at school, and he said he knew something was happening to her during that time, but he did not want to know, so he ended up passing away never knowing what actually happened to her. So towards the end of the book, she's just talking about like how she's dealing with things, like how this book helped her. And her brother Patrick, who was 2 years younger than her, also had a part in the book where he described his story and how this affected him. He was saying he noticed something was going on, but his mom just kept saying, "Oh, she's PMSing," so that's what he just thought it was. He didn't like really focus that much on it because he also had issues of himself. But he remembers being followed home from school. He was also threatened in school, and people were actually telling him, "Oh, your sister's getting hurt. Things are happening to your sister." But he just kind of like, "No, there's not. Nothing's happening to her." But I guess he vividly remembers one time when he was walking home from school and Teresa was like in front of him and she got into a random car. And this instance actually was the time where she was threatened at knife point to get into the car. So now she's grown. She's now spending her life just educating others about what human trafficking is and just trying to get like the word out, because for the longest time, she did not know what human trafficking was. She did not know what was happening to her. And she also is trying to emphasize that, kids who are like runaways in foster homes are more vulnerable to human trafficking. She lived in a good home. She had a supportive family. And she was very involved in the church. But all of this still ended up happening to her. So yeah, that was basically the basis of the book. It was a really good book. I would suggest people reading it. I read it in like 3 days. Yeah, it was really good. And it's also interesting to see like she was on the different side of things. She wasn't a runaway or any of that. So yeah. I really suggest people reading this book. And yep, that's all. Thank you.